Story 1. A year ago, on a day off from my job, I got angry and punched the stove, breaking my left hand, specifically the pinky and the finger next to it. A few hours later, I accidentally fell and used my right hand to break my fall, and it got broken too. This time, it was the pointer and middle fingers. They are now not as straight as they should be. Story 2. Breakup. Still broken 9 months later. I cannot see the point of going on. Please do not tell me there will be more. I am much older than you think. I am toast. Story 3. Worst and best, almost dying from cancer. Fought through like a warrior. It might sound a bit unusual, but I was sure I felt my grandfather's spirit's presence when I wanted to give up. He died of the same cancer, male version. I have since drastically reduced most of the symptoms and enjoy my little life. Story 4. Probably when my sister verbally abused me until I tore a chunk of hair from my head because I was afraid I would retaliate against her in my panic and chose to hurt myself instead. Then my mother told me it was my fault my sister attacked me, and that my sister was not abusive. On the bright side, my sister has not spoken to me in months. I have informed my mother that I have no mother, and I am absolutely blissful on my own, not having to be afraid to turn a doorknob because I might do it wrong. Story 5. The day my father died, I will never forget picking up the phone in the early morning to hear my mother wailing. All I could say was, "Mommy? Mommy?" Story 6. The day I watched my father take his last breath was surreal. You never know how much you miss someone until they are gone. Story 7. The day my best mate, the most patient man I have ever known, finally lost patience with me and threw me out. I had lost my job just as I moved into a new flat. I kept up the payments on the flat for 18 months while burning through savings and not finding a job. When the money ran out, I moved in with him. 16 months and no job later, he told me I had to go. I spent one night sleeping under a bridge before moving in with extended family. You think if you are tired enough, you will sleep anywhere, but you do not. You just sit there and think about everything. 18 years later, I feel like the cycle is about to repeat itself. Story 8. Putting my beloved cat of 17 years down was pure agony. He was my best friend. We slept next to each other every night. I still cry thinking about it. For whatever reason, people dying does not really bother me. Animals, on the other hand. Story 9, 3rd of May. Watched my dog run into the road under the wheels of a car. I can't believe how much I miss him. I can't get over why he did it. I had put him in the car to go for a walk. Story 10. Tie between the day I found out my father was dying of cancer and the day I learned my mother had passed unexpectedly. Story 11. Going over my grandmother's life insurance and documentation as a favor since she is dying of cancer. I learned she did not leave anything for my entire family, even for those who have given up important times in their lives to help her. I want to say something, but it would result in my whole family fighting over money and my dying grandmother being alone, while only I could say anything. So I will say nothing. Story 12. When my son died unexpectedly, I had to notify our family. A family member from another state went to the college campus to find his sibling, and I told them over the phone. It was difficult. Story 13. September 23rd, 2021. I crashed out at school because a girl was bullying me. I do not remember that day clearly, but I do remember scratching my arms so hard they bled, and the blood was seeping through my clothes. I was put in therapy after that. Story 14. Watched my mother die when I was 17. She was 40 and had stage 4 pancreatic cancer. I am the oldest of 5 siblings, 21 years old, and my youngest sibling was 5 months old. I had to share that moment with some of the worst people in the world as well. Story 15. I was pregnant with twins and found out I lost one of them. I have never felt pain, confusion, or guilt like that before. Story 16. The day I had to testify against my assailant, despite abundant physical evidence and witnesses, and the jury said, "We believe you but don't feel comfortable holding him accountable." Story 17. Either when my grandmother died or when we held her funeral, it is strange how hard it is to break routine after you lose a loved one. For a while after she died, we would be out at an event or a party and think, Oh, we should make a plate for Grandma. Oh, right. Story 18. Saying good morning to my dog at the start of the day, and then unexpectedly saying goodbye at the end of the day. Story 19. So far, on June 9th this year, my grandmother passed away. She was one of my favorite people in the whole world. Story 20. Probably when we lost one of our previous dogs, Marcy, to an unexpected medical emergency on December 28, 2022. She was the best friend anyone could ever have and was there with me through many tough times during my teenage years in college. Story 21. My 44th birthday. Marriage officially ended in the most embarrassing and humiliating fashion possible. My current wife has made sure I feel important on my birthday every year we have been together. Story 22. It has not happened yet, but I know it will. I have a 13-and-a-half-year-old French bulldog. He is in great health. Recent blood work, scans, and tests are completely fine. He is slowing down considerably, and it is very hard to watch. He means everything to me. It will break me. Story 23. When my grandmother called to tell me my father was dead, it was from his number. That was 19 years ago and still makes me sick to my stomach thinking about it. Story 24. The time when Ikram Imamoglu was arrested, I realized that there was not even 1% of justice in Turkey. That was the worst day of my life. Story 25. I used to have a serious problem with compulsive voyeurism and I got caught. My entire life collapsed almost instantly. One morning I had a decent life, and by the following night I was alone in my parents' house without any of my belongings, and not a single person knowing or caring if I was dead or alive. I am not a victim, and I am not going to make excuses. What I did was wrong. I am just stating a fact. Story 26. The day I found out my grandfather passed away was devastating. The impact was doubled when we learned he had been dead for months, and his friend's family had hidden it from us to secure his property in their own names. I was 18 at the time, confused as to why my grandfather, one of my favorite people, was not answering or returning my calls. I never got the chance to say goodbye, and to this day it is hard not to feel some resentment toward those people. Story 27. When my grandmother passed away from breast cancer, I spent 6 months watching her slowly wilt away in a hospital bed, knowing there was nothing we could do but sit and let it run its course. It was especially hard on my grandfather, who was depressed for 4 years after she died and never really recovered from her loss. Story 28. When my grandmother passed away, it was unexpected. She was completely healthy, had a fall in the morning, and was gone by midnight that evening. I had never experienced the loss of someone close to me, and it was an indescribable pain. I was physically sick at the hospital. I kept thinking how she had a long and great life, did everything she wanted, and had children and grandchildren. I could not fathom how people coped with losing someone young. I still cannot, to be honest. Story 29. I brought my 12-year-old in for orthopedic surgery. 30 minutes before they finished closing him up, they told me everything was going great. Next, the surgeon pulled me into a consulting room and said he went into cardiac arrest as they were closing him up. By the time I arrived at the pediatric intensive care unit, the doctor in charge had pulled me aside and told me they had tried everything and gave him a 50-50 chance of surviving. Then we discussed bringing people in to say their goodbyes and if I was willing to sign a do not resuscitate order. I will never forget the day I had to do a deathbed vigil for my 12-year-old, and I am thankful he was able to pull through. Story 30. Getting arrested. Long story short, I stole formula from Walmart. They pulled me aside, scanned everything, and called the police on me. I had my 2 children with me. I needed to get several cans to get by. It was a hard time financially for me. Story 31. Easy. I'm 46 now, by the way. When I was 19, I flushed my entire life and career down the drain in one night. I had just started truck driving with a Class A commercial driver's license, making a good $80,000 to $90,000 per year. Then I got hit with a driving under the influence offense. It's like all the things you hear about getting a ticket hitting close to home. I was literally 1 minute away from home and got pulled over for a broken rear left blinker. I foolishly allowed the officer to search my car. I had an old Skull vodka bottle under my seat and took the open container ticket, whatever that was. I still don't know. But as you will read, who cares anymore? So this one simple ticket turned my career and life, which I thought I had planned, into a downward spiral because I got fired. Next thing you know, I was living drunk and defeated at 20, so I immediately caught 2 more driving under the influence offenses because I was actually drinking and driving. I seriously had nothing to care for anymore. My career was gone. I spent 3 years in jail and tens of thousands of dollars correcting my mistake. But no matter what, that one moment is the reason why I am now just a Domino's pizza delivery driver. Yeah, it doesn't seem fair and I rarely talk about it. One moment. Story 32. When my mother died, I came back home to take care of her. I was not really nice to her and was stressed out of my mind. I was neither mentally nor financially capable of taking care of her. When she died, I was broken for a long time. Story 33. The day my mom died. The day before, she told me to go out with my friend, so I did. She was in the hospital. I had been spending every day with her there. A police officer woke me up and took me to the hospital. They wouldn't let me go to her room. They guided me into a room I had never seen behind the nurse's station. A hysterical nurse was crying. My grandma was crying and having a nervous breakdown before they even told us anything. I was 22 and suddenly my mom was dead. I had to take care of my grandma, deal with my mom's death, notify everyone, and handle my sister's drug addiction. It was just awful. One day I was a kid and the next I was not. I buried my mom, settled everything, and then I left for 15 years. Story 34. When my only sister died and then my dad, it completely broke my heart. They unconditionally loved me, supported me, always made me laugh, and gave me security. Missed every single day. Story 35. When my father died suddenly at work, I never got to say goodbye or hug him again. I was 19. My mother was bereft and was not the same afterward. Story 36. The day I almost died from an asthma attack. I was lucky my friends were around to call an ambulance to take me to the hospital. Story 37. The day I lost my first job, all I could think about was how I would get another job so I would not get kicked out of my apartment. Story 38. It's tough. The day I was assaulted by my best friend's cousin and held hostage. The day my mother broke a mirror, handed me the glass, and told me to kill myself. The day my father grabbed me by the throat, forcing us to call the police. The day my brother threw a steak knife at me, and I almost died. The day my ex of 10 years told me they felt entitled to treat me poorly because I have to put up with you as payment, resulting in a messy divorce and jail time. The day my friend who helped me get out of that messy divorce betrayed me, threatened me and my dog with guns, leaving me homeless. Honestly, just pick one. Story 39. It was yesterday. I live far away from my uncle, and he is currently suffering from a brain tumor. The state he is in right now makes me think that this was the last time I saw him. The travel back home has been an emotional experience. Story 40. Most traumatizing was saying goodbye to my father when he went into the hospital for a stem cell transplant. He is okay now, though. Story 41. Peter Gibbons. I was sitting in my cubicle today and realized that ever since I started working, every single day of my life has been worse than the day before. That means that every day you see me, it is the worst day of my life. I feel like that. Story 42. Not a single day, but in close succession. My son graduated from high school, my former husband moved out, and my father passed away, all within 3 weeks. Story 43. Last week, each day was challenging. The next 2 months are not looking any better. Perhaps after that. Story 44. When my wife was diagnosed with an incredibly rare disease that caused a type of brain damage preventing her from forming new memories, she forgot everything immediately after it happened. This was 19 years ago. She went from being my best friend, lover, and partner in crime to my caregiving. Story 45. Waking up from brain surgery was both the best and worst experience. It changed my life for the better, but the recovery was something I never want to go through again. Story 46. The day my mother died. She was dying of lung cancer and had been in a coma for a week. The at-home hospice nurse said she thought my mother had a few more days. After spending a week at my parents' house with my brothers and sisters and feeling the heaviness of it all, I returned to my house an hour away to see my children, who were toddlers. 10 minutes after I got home, my brother called to say my mother had died. I was the only one not there with her. That was 13 years ago. I still feel awful about it. Story 47. November 1st, 2019. I was involved in a medically induced car accident. I had to give up my driver's license. My parents have not had a problem driving me around, and I can also call an Uber, but it is just not the same. Story 48. I left my ex after 4 years once we graduated college. There were already many small issues, but in the end, our love languages were just a bit different. I made the mistake of blocking her for attention, as I had seen many couples my age do the same back and forth. However, not everyone is that immature. I went home where I needed to go, but I should have ended things more amicably. Story 49. I think this Monday was difficult for me. I got into my first car crash, and it was my fault. I rear-ended someone due to a sudden stop. Their car was fine and no one was hurt. My car is not fine, and I do not know when I will be able to have it fully fixed. That night, while I was upset, one of my dogs ate my underwear. The next day, I spent 5 hours in the rain with her while she vomited until it all came back up. This week is just not going well for me. Story 50. The day I started talking to my abuser, I cut her out completely and have gotten much better. However, it does not go away. Story 51. In 3rd grade, we were supposed to have a pizza party as a class to celebrate being the most well-behaved class. It was my birthday that day. I stole my neighbor's homework, put my name on it, submitted it, and watched as she cried. After they found out it was me, I was sent to another classroom and was unable to participate in any of the pizza festivities. Story 52. I received a text saying my best friend nearly killed himself. Later that day, my girlfriend broke up with me. It was not the greatest day I have had. Story 53. The day I came to terms with the fact that my father and his religion would always stop him from loving me. He kicked me out for the night, and I sobbed on a friend's couch. I was 16. That was the only time someone other than my parents saw me have a breakdown. I think I scared her a lot. Story 54. Happened recently. My father complained that he spent much more on me than my other 2 siblings who graduated in 2002. It destroyed my love for him and harmed my morale in trying to find a good job. Story 55. The day I reached the top of the building to commit suicide by jumping, but I couldn't jump, so I cried next to the plastic trash. Story 56. When my cat died in front of me, he had a disease where liquid would get into his lungs. The veterinary treatment was too expensive, and we could not afford it back then. I still remember when I came back from the vet heartbroken because there were no possible solutions, and he only had 1 week to live at most. In 4 days, it will mark 1 year since I lost Blackie. Although I still have many other cats whom I love and cherish, I still miss that cat very much. Story 57. On October 14th, 2015, I suffered an injury that permanently changed not only my body and my life as a whole, but also how I approached exercising. Story 58. Probably the day I was born, I had a stroke and became disabled from that point on. Since then, I have experienced difficulties in several ways. Physically, mentally, and socially. So yes, my worst day became my worst life. Story 59. Fully realizing how toxic my family was and that my mother was abusing me felt like bricks hitting me, forcing me to admit it. Story 60. When my father had a stroke during my brother's rehearsal dinner the night before his wedding, it was terribly tragic. I still have nightmares to this day. This happened in April 2025. Story 61. My 31-year-old son passed away from a pulmonary embolism, suddenly and unexpectedly. He had just married his longtime girlfriend a few months earlier. It has been almost 6 years, but it still feels like yesterday. I almost texted him the other day, and it just hit me. Story 62. Coming home to find my fiancé had died suddenly and somewhat unexpectedly. He was sick and had come home from the hospital the day before. I was 33. He was 35. Then his mother said it was my fault he had died because I had gone to work that day. This was after I had exhausted all my sick time, being his full-time caregiver, full-time teacher, and raising a 5-year-old. It was very difficult. Story 63. Watching my abusive drug-addicted father get mad at my little brother once, kicking the coffee table across the living room while screaming, threatening to kill him and calling him a coward, all because my brother stood up for me against our narcissistic, drug-addicted, abusive mother. He was 13. I was 16. The table was solid oak and had clutter piled all over it. Things flew everywhere. My parents laughed and screamed at us while my brother and I cried in terror until we finally packed our belongings and left, never staying with our parents again. I never liked my father after that day. I am 28 now, and I never forgave him for mentally torturing my brother for years when he just needed a father. Story 64. When he was 6 months old, my nephew had life-saving heart surgery but wasn't out of danger for several months. He is the son of my eldest sister, who tried for years to get pregnant through in vitro fertilization. He was in the pediatric intensive care unit of Evelina Children's Hospital in Waterloo and was really struggling. The medical team did not think he would survive. One day, I was sitting outside the hospital with my other sister, waiting for my eldest sister and her wife to come out so we could support her through the terrible ordeal happening inside. We sat and talked, trying to comfort her as best we could. As she left to return to her son's bedside, she turned to my sister and me and said, "Maybe I just wasn't meant to have children." The way she walked back inside the hospital broke me. It was as if she was dragging every bone in her body. I wept for hours. I couldn't bear to see my sister enduring that, along with her wife, and to think of the fear my 6-month-old nephew must have felt. It was heartbreaking. 2 years later, he has fully recovered and is a mischievous little rascal. She was meant to have a child. She is a fantastic mother, and I love my nephew more than anything in the world. Story 65. I was 23 years old when my grandmother died. The day after her funeral, my father's family came to my house and made my father confess to me, my brother, and my mother that he had molested and raped several of his younger cousins when they were kids. They all agreed not to tell anyone about it until my grandmother died because it would break her heart. To be clear, my father could barely hug me when I was growing up and never molested me or my brother. However, it really upset me that his family chose not to warn my mother about it while I was a child. You would think they would at least try to keep an eye on him, but they were and still are practically strangers to me. Story 66. I have a few, but I think today was the worst because people kept interrupting me when I tried to explain things, and they did not care. Story 67. Today, the second worst day was yesterday. Story 68. Actually, this was the worst day of my friend's life. We'll call him Gary. He used to work as a janitor at a hospital to pay the bills and is a good person, but he has zero filter and a dark sense of humor, which makes for some memorable stories. Gary was making his rounds one night, mopping up typical hospital spills. Mostly questionable liquids and existential dread, he says, when he got a call to the emergency room. Someone had made a mess. Okay, fine. Messes are his bread and butter. He arrived, and the nurse pointed him to a corner of the triage area. There it was. A puddle. Not just any puddle, but a glistening, viscous, yellowish-green lake of pus, blood, and necrotic tissue. It turned out a patient had been walking around with an abscess the size of a grapefruit, Gary estimated. It had finally burst right there onto the linoleum. He stared for a moment, then sighed. "Great," he said. "Another Tuesday." He grabbed his mop, but as he got closer, he smelled what he described as the most nauseating odor, marinated in death and despair. Without missing a beat, Gary christened the puddle the Lake of Forbidden Dip. He said it had the consistency of melted mozzarella gone wrong, and that the smell was so potent he could practically taste the infection. He spent the next 20 minutes battling the lake. The mop kept getting stuck, and he had to wring it out repeatedly into a biohazard bag that was rapidly filling with the unholy essence of festering flesh. He even claimed a tiny chunk of necrotic debris flew up and landed on his cheek. He wiped it off with a shudder and kept going. He nearly vomited inside his mask, and the other staff were afraid to go near the lake. When he finally finished, the area was disinfected thoroughly. Gary, however, was forever changed. He still brings up the lake of forbidden dip whenever we're eating something with a cheesy sauce. It is his go-to story for shocking new acquaintances. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.